So let me start this video off with a question. What's your favourite racing series? And why did you answer Formula 1? Formula 1 is the most prestigious racing series of all time. There's no doubt about that. Sure, it's not as old as IndyCar and the races aren't as long as Le Mans, but Formula 1 is arguably the best motorsport series on the planet. It even has some great racing. Sometimes. But you see, while I love Formula 1 to the point that I decided to make something of a career out of shouting about it in my bedroom, it's not my favourite series. In fact, I prefer Formula 2. The series so good they named it after the 2020 Ferrari. According to a poll I put up on my community tab, over 89% of you prefer F1 over F2, meaning that I'm clearly in the minority here. And for that reason, allow me to explain to you why 89% of you are wrong, and why Formula 2 is better than Formula 1. Yes. Really. But instead of me bothering to tell you why F2 is the best series ever, let me start off by handing you over to a fellow F2 nerd, and one of my personal favourite motorsport YouTubers, Dylan James GP.
Hello John Warren fans, I hope you're all doing very well, living on that hellhole of a channel. I'm joking John, please don't unsubscribe. So, if you're all unaware, which you probably are because I feel like a pub singer singing at Glastonbury right now, I'm a huge fan of Formula 2, and discuss it on my channel quite frequently. When John messaged me and asked to come on his channel and talk about it, I was absolutely thrilled, so let's not waste any time. I love Formula 2 due to the abundance of competition and sheer unpredictability. I'm certain that no one would have ever predicted that in 2019, an MP seat would be occupied by Mahavir Raghunathan. All joking aside, however, you get some surprises in Formula 2, such as Felipe Drogovic's fantastic sprint race win in Austria in his first ever Formula 2 race weekend. Also, the cars are equal. Sort of. As I stated in my Is Formula 2 Equal video, the car's setups can be tweaked significantly. However, there is never one team that has the edge. Instead, we can see race winners from most teams, although there are some backmarkers such as Trident and, Samaya. The format in Formula 2 also stands out, with the feature race and the sprint race. The reverse top 8 really adds a new dynamic to the whole weekend, including the feature. It makes the battle for P8 more exciting, as well as the battle for the lead, which you also commonly have, unlike Formula 1. Also, the reverse top 8 allows for incredible racing in the sprint race since the quicker drivers are further back. You're never bored, apart from Russia. Sorry, I'm aware that I'm coming across as some F2 advocate, but I absolutely love F1 too. Also in Formula 2, pay drivers don't exist. Wait, huh? What the fuck? Okay, pay drivers exist, but they commonly come and go quite quickly, apart from Sean Galeo. Also, where it's not as mainstream as Formula 1, you wouldn't have known who Mazepin was in the 2019 season. To be honest, I don't know why any of you would have wanted to, but I found it amusing watching him plod around in P18, then binning it the one time he was leading. Also, the 2019-20 chassis is just one of my favourite looking racing cars of all time. Just look at them. Would you look at that? It's this guy! Anyway, I think it's time to end my nerdgasm here. Thank you very much for having me, John, and I'll pass it back over to you.
Formula 2 is a series where 21 up-and-coming young drivers and Sean Galeo fight it out in mostly equal machinery for a place in F1. As with any motorsport, some teams are better than others and win more races, but it's nowhere near the level we get in F1 with Mercedes winning every race. And on the subject of dominance, you ain't getting much of that in F2. If a driver wins the F2 championship, they can't race in the series again. This generally means that F2 champions always go on to Formula 1, and if they don't, well, then they have to put up with driving vacuum cleaners with attack mode. What that means is that every year we get a new Formula 2 champion, which, if you didn't realise already, is a good thing, unless you really like watching the same person win every race, in which case you're a psychopath. Speaking of people winning all the time, I'm sure you're all aware that almost everyone in the F1 community agrees that 2012 was one of the best seasons in F1 history. And why is that? Because there were so many race winners. Formula 2 is like 2012, but every year. So that's enough about the racing. Let's talk about some of the drivers. F2 isn't about having a bunch of F1 worthy drivers who know exactly when to make the moves and exactly how to make them. And that's the beauty of it. You see, if all the drivers were F1 worthy, then the racing would be way less interesting. The fact that they're all young, hot-headed rookies competing for just 1 or 2 F1 seats per year means that they aren't afraid to make ridiculous moves every time they get the opportunity. Especially if their name is Nikita Mazepin. Not to mention, most F2 champions have gone on to do well in Formula 1 as well, and Jolyon Palmer went on to drive for Renault. The next thing that us F2 nerds like about the series is the car. It's a Dallara F2 2018 car with very sexy 18-inch wheels, that shoots more flames than a Nissan GTR owned by any YouTuber. In the back, it has a Mechachrome turbo V6 engine, pushing out 620 horsepower to the rear wheels. Sure, that might not sound like a lot compared to the 1000 horsepower engine in the back of the Mercedes F1 car, but it's still only 12 horsepower less than the 2020 Ferrari, but all that doesn't mean the cars are slow. An F2 car would have no trouble hitting 200 miles an hour in a straight line, and they're generally less than 10 seconds a lap slower than an F1 car in qualifying, providing the car isn't driven by Sean Goliath. While 10 seconds a lap isn't exactly a small margin when the average lap time is only a minute and a half, we have to remember that this series isn't supposed to be the fastest in any aspect. It's a series for shaping young drivers to be the best they can be, and I think it does that quite well. For most drivers at least. And for all of you Tifosi out there, Ferrari are actually doing alright in F2. Well, I say alright. The Ferrari Driver Academy finished 1st, 2nd and 4th in the championship. And in F1, oh yeah, 8th. And 13th. And as for Drive to Survive, which is a big reason that F1 is so popular today, F2 has that covered as well. It's called Chasing the Dream, only costs £2.29 a month to watch, and it also gives you access to watch every single F2 and F1 race on catch-up. The commentators in F2 are also better than in F1's. Of course, David Croft is a great commentator, but I'll be honest here, he's an acquired taste. On the other hand, Formula 2's commentator is Alex Jakes, who has a voice from heaven and is probably the only person in the world who can make a virtual Grand Prix exciting. Speaking of making things exciting, I think Formula 2 is the only series in the world that can make Sochi interesting, and that's not a small achievement. Finally, let's discuss something that I believe is one of the most important aspects of watching racing, and that is the noise. Sure, the turbo hybrid era F1 engines may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think that we can all agree that the Formula 2 engine makes it sound like 100 people scraping their fingers down chalkboards at the same time, which probably isn't a nice sound. So yeah, I like Formula 2. While it's not the fastest or the most prestigious, and even though it doesn't have the best drivers in the world, it's my favourite racing series of all time. And if I had to only watch one racing series for the rest of my life, it would be F2, especially seeing as it no longer has Nikita Mazepin. Well then, that's going to do it for this video, so if you enjoyed it then please do leave a like on it and subscribe to both me and Dylan for more content like this on both of our channels. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.